Need an assist on finding a new vehicle? Head to Bob Moore Ford because we're dishing out deals on our entire inventory, like the 2013 F-150 or F-250. Pick yours, then roll out. Visit BobMooreFordOKC.com for a chance to win our monthly prize.
Durant, pull-up jumper, off the rim, and and the Thunder win! All right, come on, let's sing the Thunder song. When you hear the sound of thunder, don't you get too scared. Just grab your Thunder buddy and say these magic words.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Thunder Buddies podcast presented by Bob Moore Ford. It's a post-Game 5 podcast. A lot of Thunder fans in mourning in the city, and we're talking to Darnell Mayberry like always. How you doing?
Doing well, Slater. How are you?
I'm doing good, and we got a special guest, first time playoff guest. I know he's happy to be back. Sports editor Mike Sherman.
It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. Podcasting is one of the highlights, the very highlights of my job with you guys.
Honorary Thunder buddy.
Yeah, I'll go for that.
Podcasting, it seems like it would be a type of, I don't know, format would be declining, but I think it's kind of on the rise.
My daughter gave me this. She went to Radio Shack and got me a cassette tape deal with a plug. You plug it right into my old 2003 Mazda MPV, and I listened to Oriole games thanks to my phone. And last night on the way to the game, I went to iTunes and listened to Thunder Buddies.
It's odd.
I'm a listener.
We appreciate it.
We're growing fan base, right?
Yeah, I think Mike's here for a reason today. To bring some level-headedness to this conversation.
And we'll see how that lasts.
I think that's what's going to be his role today. We'll see. I'm not so sure, but I think Slater and I are going in opposite directions. I just got a funny feeling about that, about the Thunder. So we'll see how it goes.
All right.
It always gets lively when Mike Sherman's in the booth.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, well then let's talk a little bit of Thunder Grizzlies. The biggest issue in this series. What you want me to go first?
Go first.
It's Kevin Durant.
I agree.
I mean, clearly, I think. I mean, he's shooting 36% in the last 4 games, and we're talking about 4 overtime games. 4 games that can swing on anything. And the guy that shot 50% all season was consistently above 50 almost every game. He shot under 50%, and this goes back to the regular season, but 11 of the last 14 games, he's been under 50% shooting. Fatigue, I know you've mentioned. Tony Allen, I know you will mention, Mike. But he's just got to be better. He's the MVP. He's the MVP. He's got to be better.
Of the regular season.
Yeah, well.
We are talking about a different – we've been transported to a different planet. We're no longer on that planet regular season. We're now on – 40 days and 40 games and win or go home and play a game, talk about it, play another game. Everybody has some rest. The rest is different. This is a different animal, playoff basketball. We know it. You know it. And so we have – I think one thing that would be helpful as we think about things is to separate from the regular season. Sometime next week, they're going to come to Oklahoma City. There may be a game. There may not. And they're going to present that Maurice Podoloff trophy to Kevin Durant, and he will have earned it.
Yeah,
he
no doubt about it.
He will have been the MVP of the regular season. But now this is different. This is series basketball. And people say things like, well, the Memphis Grizzlies know all their plays. Everybody knows everybody's plays.
Yeah.
It's blood sport. It's butcher ball. You got to get to the rim. It's Jordan rules. I claim that the biggest issue is that Durant is not only going against Tony Allen, he's going against one of the elite team defenses.
A smart defense, too.
And he every time he looks up, he sees 3 people between him and the goal.
Figure it out.
If his 3-point shot is not falling, then comes the problems. And that really is the issue. He's not – that 5 of 12 game in Game 2, If there was anything assembling that or resembling that, it'd be different. But it's not. And I think it's a discredit to Memphis to say Durant's got to figure it out. They're taking away from him. I quote from the film room. The thing that makes the Grizzlies' defense so good is the steady energy, communication, and rotation they play with. That's what Kevin Durant's up against. It's not your run-of-the-mill regular season game against Sacramento in which he gets his efficiency. Stop judging him by the regular season. It's not
You're
relevant.
right. I'm not. I even said it in the film when we were talking about it. I'm not expecting him to shoot over 50% each game, but you can't shoot 36% for 4 crucial, close games. That's that's a lower percentage than anyone in the season this season that was eligible. Brandon Jennings shot 37%, worst in the league. Kevin Durant shooting under that the last 4 games. 4 crucial games. He is kind of shrinking in big moments.
Say that Brandon Jennings number again.
He's shooting 37%. He shot 37% this season, worst in the NBA among eligible players, and Durant's under it.
Okay, so that was regular. You've gone back to the regular season again.
I'm just using it as a kind of way to look at it, comparison tool. I know what you're saying, and I understand. But if he had bumped his percentage up to 44%, if he had hit a few more shots in a couple of these games, a few shots, he's missed layups, he's missed easy looks, some that are not on Tony Allen, free throws. The Thunder probably win a couple games if he just hits a couple more shots.
That's the place to go get the points, the guy who's shooting the most. I mean, and so we have something here. Obviously, Durant is the focal point of this. There's talk about his legacy. There's talk about his body language.
I say all this, and he's 25, okay? And as you've mentioned, I don't necessarily agree with your argument with he's facing the Jordan rules, but Jordan didn't win a title till he was, 27, 28. LeBron obviously didn't. When LeBron was 27, remember the series he had against the Mavs in the finals? And the series he had the year before against Boston where he rips off his jersey after, and, I mean, that kind of fiasco. All the elite players have gone through stuff like this, but it was just, we thought Durant was at this elite level. He descended to this, he's maybe the greatest scorer of our generation. Well, the greatest scorer of our generation, he might end up being, but he doesn't let this happen to him in this first-round series.
My thing is, you have to elevate your game in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about regular season, Mike, and how you can't compare the regular season to the postseason. I think you can. I think you have to look at the regular season and what a player did, and I think you have to expect a great player like Kevin Durant to be even better in the postseason, and he's been far from that. That's where I'm coming down hard on him because he's better than what he's showing. Mm-hmm. I don't care who's against him. I don't care how many guys he's going against. If they're sending a double team your way or a triple team your way, make the smart pass. Trust your teammates. Stop turning the ball over. Okay, let's start there. Stop turning the ball over. Go get a rebound. Don't let Marc Gasol get a pivotal rebound, offensive rebound right in front of you. Show some heart. Show some will. And show that you're committed to playing hard for 48 minutes. All this hanging your head, shrugging your shoulders. When he missed that second free throw, forget Joey Crawford. We'll talk about that in a second. But when he missed that second free throw, go back and look at his reaction. He hung his head, he slumped his shoulders, and he knew he missed a big free throw. I'm not saying don't be emotional about it, but he's done this too many times throughout his career. And it's time for him to start playing with more fire. I'm not seeing that in the postseason. We saw it in the stretch where he had 12 straight 30-point games or whatever it was, 40-point game. We're not seeing that anymore. And that's where he's got to be better in the postseason.
And I know me and Darnell are holding him to this ridiculously high standard because of the defense he's facing, because of what he did in the regular season. But he's elevated himself to that level where, hey, we're talking about a guy that's a surefire Hall of Famer. I mean, this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer.
And not only that, Slater, but what did we do last year? All of us in this room, Thunder fans locally, people nationally, we gave him a pass last year because Russell Westbrook wasn't on the floor. Russell Westbrook is back, and he hasn't been great, but he's been good enough to take some pressure off of Kevin Durant. And Durant has still been horrible.
I think everything we're saying is right. My problem with all of this is it doesn't take into account the elite defense that he's facing, and I think that's part of the equation. There's two things. There's not enough Memphis in this discussion. And I think it's inevitable. It's the way the game's set up. It's a white-hot focus on Durant. A couple things about that. Fatigue, as Vince Lombardi said, makes cowards of us all. Fatigue. And you guys had a great discussion of this the last time you podcasted, which was, would you rather be the 3 seed rested than the 2 seed?
Not only the 3 seed, but the 3 seed and playing the Warriors.
That's right.
Then the 2 rested, and then the 2. They shouldn't have played them late in the season like they did.
They had to. They had to.
Did they?
They're trying to contend for championships, not get out of the first round. You know what I mean? I mean, I think it's literally
then maybe say, hey, Russ, I mean, your knee's all right. Let's play you this game and not Kevin.
You know, the equation, the thing we're leaving out, too, is Tabo and Perks injuries. Those things really mattered. It just accumulated. It was one of these, you know, the idea that the Thunder would go through what they did last year with Westbrook out and then just snap right back in. Here's Westbrook back. It doesn't happen like that. These things are not linear. So there's that. I think the fatigue, and I'm not just talking about accumulation of 82 games with major minutes, most minutes in the league. Is that what we're saying? So I'm not just talking about that. I'm also talking about the mental fatigue of carrying the team, the mental fatigue of having Tony Allen in your grill like nobody's business, and great players like Jordan, like Magic. I mean, Magic won early, but Magic went through his little Celtic problems, like LeBron. Wes Unseld, we talked before the podcast started. Wes Unseld, Dirk Nowitzki, and maybe Kevin Durant. And I'm sorry, Karl Malone would be the other one. We left out Karl. MVPs who didn't make it out of the first round. And 2 of those 3, Dirk and Wes, went on to do it.
Yeah.
This is a teaching. He's a teacher. The playoffs, the experience is the best teacher. And Durant right now is learning. Like what you said to me is, I don't think he really understands even now what it takes to play at this level, and he's learning right now.
My thing is, I thought he might have figured that out by now. I mean, you go back, look at his postseason career. The Lakers, he struggled. I mean, that was the only time he struggled more than this series. And this series, we talked about it last night, looks a lot like that Lakers series in 2010. But that was the only other time he struggled like this. So we figured he's been through this. You know, he's had success against Denver. He had an incredible series against Denver. He's beaten this same Grizzlies team before. He's faced adversity without having Russell Westbrook on the floor. He's lost in the finals 4 straight. It's like we've kind of seen all of what the playoffs can throw at you, and we thought, at least I thought, Durant was past this, and it just looks like he's not.
I remember when LeBron was, I mean, that game LeBron had against, was it Detroit, where he scored all those 52, and I thought, that's it. Mm-hmm. This is the
Everyone
game.
Did.
He now understands. We have gone to a new threshold. That's behind him. I mean, that was the narrative of Reggie Jackson yesterday over at the practice facility or 2 days ago. Well, I'm saying, what I'm saying
way
is,
less degree.
Yeah, way less degree. But we always say that, okay, now that you've done this, that means you'll never go back there. I don't know about you guys, but I have teenagers in my house. I was once a teenager. Even today, you think, hey, Mike's got this finally figured out. He's not going to do X, Y, and Z. And lo and behold, there he is, doing it again. The incredible discipline it takes to be a champion. No. What we're seeing is the finish carpentry that is required to do this. We're no longer putting up studs. It's finish carpentry. And Durant is not there.
That's a shame.
What?
That's a shame. And that's not to say he's not going to get there.
That's right.
But, I mean,
we're just talking about it right here.
He's the second best player in the world. He's the MVP of the season, regular season. We thought he was better than this. No one. I don't want to say no one. I didn't see this coming. I don't think many people saw this coming. What Kevin Durant is doing and not doing.
I called it a 7-game series.
That's the team.
I knew they were going to wear him out.
Those are the teams.
I knew they were going to wear him out.
You knew they were going to wear him out. You knew the Grizzlies had a chance. It's just how this series has gone that nobody would have expected. I mean, this was supposed to be, hey, he's going to win the MVP this year. This could be the season. If he goes and he can win the title, maybe he can, get in the conversation with LeBron as maybe you're the greatest player in the world. He's going out in the, potentially going out in the first round and going out quiet.
Let me say this.
Quiet?
It's pretty quiet. Well, the noise that's being made is not good noise. It's negative noise. Turnovers, low field goal percentage, bad shots at the end of games. 2 of them now in this series, bad 3-pointers. Come on. The noise that he's making is bad noise. But one thing that kind of illustrates how I thought Durant might be over these struggles. Go back 2 years ago when Jason Kidd D'd him up in the Western Conference Finals, or 3 years ago. Jason Kidd owned him. He tried to post him up. Every time he turned, Jason Kidd would strip the ball. 6'4" guard, dominating Durant defensively. All of a sudden, 3 years later, another 6'4" guard dominating Durant defensively. You would have thought that Durant would have learned that lesson 3 years ago and said, okay, I can never, ever let another 6'4" guard dominate me defensively, and we're just not seeing that. We haven't seen it.
It's clearly kind of we found like the weak point in his offensive game. It's like kind of tenacious, smaller guys that say, hey, you can't get around me like you can on bigger guys. I can strip you because you're sloppy with the ball through the lane, and you can't push me into the post. And I think that's his biggest offensive hole. And I know we've talked about should he post up more. You've talked about I know Mike, you said, well, I mean, if you're not comfortable down there, why would you? Well, that's an issue because if you're not able to do the other stuff, if your shot's not on like it hasn't been lately, you got to post Tony Allen up.
You can't make a pit stop like it's a Daytona 500 and pull over and have somebody have a crew come in and put a post game on your chassis. Doesn't work that way.
That's an issue.
Yeah, it is an issue. And these little guys that you described, that scenario, as you were describing, who bothers Durant? You know what it reminded me of? Dirk Nowitzki. One year, the Rockets came in and beat Dallas, or I'm trying to remember, beat them or just wore them out and gave the next team a blueprint. And what happened was the Rockets put Tracy McGrady on Dirk. Dirk actually likes to – he doesn't catch and shoot.
He likes the one dribble.
He likes to have that one dribble. They took away his one dribble. Tracy McGrady, who gets beat up a lot,
I love Tracy.
Came in and crowded him, and guess what? Dirk couldn't do anything. He was off. It was masterful the way they played him, and that's what people do. They find out what you don't like.
You're right. And, I mean, because he's compared to him so much, I remember LeBron a couple years ago. No, it might have been last year. I think it was last year after Game 1 of the Pacers series when Paul George D'd him up very well, and everyone was talking about, well, why doesn't he post him up? And then the next game, LeBron took Paul George in the post, just pushed him underneath. They kind of cleared the floor and kept posting him up, and he dominated him that game.
But that's the year that they won the finals,
and that he figured it out.
But he didn't have it until then. He didn't have it
well. He had it a little bit better than Durant because he's more physically capable of getting down there.
Right. The last thing about this point, from my standpoint, is that the idea that Durant needs to develop this. I don't even think we think they go and develop it in an off season. It's really first I need awareness, then I need to work on it, then I need to be comfortable with it, and this is not the time to get it. Last summer was the time to get it, and the minutes this guy's play here. Do these guys even have time to go add this? They're going to play for Team USA. They're going to do this in the summer. They're going to do that in the summer. The summer is not the summer. We're talking weeks.
Well, you know what might help them is an extra 2 months off that he's about to get.
It. That's right. There you go. There's some post-practice.
But, all right. I mean, we've talked about it enough. I mean,
I do have a question from a reader on Twitter, Dustin Johnson 21, a fine Thunder reader. Is Tony Allen a better defensive player than KD is an offensive player?
No.
Tony
Allen's more of a specialist defensive player. I mean, there's guys that can exploit him. You can't guard bigger guys. Durant's all-world offensively. I mean, I know we've just kind of been banging on him for the last 20 minutes. But, I mean, we're talking about one of the best offensive players, skilled, unique offensive players ever. Tony Allen, I mean, you can't affect a game. Like, when Kevin Durant's on offensively, Tony Allen can't affect a game defensively like Durant can consistently offensively.
I agree.
Okay. We talked plenty about Durant. How about Russell Westbrook? How about that Russell Westbrook game last night? What the? I'm still not sure I'm still not sure if he had an incredible game or a bad game or.
I promise you
it's
this.
Both. It's both.
It was not bad.
No,
I
it wasn't.
promise you
he
it
kept
wasn't
him in
bad.
the game, but he made some terrible, terrible mistakes too. But he also had the first triple-double of the playoffs, 30, 10, and 13, 11 assists in the second half. Some great assists in overtime. Obviously, the game-saving steal and dunk. But some of the threes he took last night and that he's taken in the series, dude, you're a 30% three-point shooter who's shooting worse than that right now. That's just not a smart shot. I mean, it just isn't. And then he goes at post-game and says, oh, if they give me 15-footers, well, that's 9 of 10. That's knocking them down. I looked, he's 12 of 44 on mid-range shots in the series. And then his defense. His defense was an issue last night. He gave up 2 layups, one, like, seriously, Olay, like, here you go, Mike Conley. And then he looks, he always looks around at everyone else like it was their fault. It was like, dude, you just let him go.
Where was my help?
Yeah. And then also he did one of those, that's kind of like the international sign of I'm being lazy on defense, where the guy's going by you and you kind of
wrap around.
You do the wrapper, reach around and pretend like you're trying to poke it out. He did one of those late in the game, and Conley had an easy floater.
Mike, you got any more level-headed perspective about this?
Well, you know, when the wise people of the world, the grandparents, the people who've been to the mountain and back, they look at people like Westbrook and say, young fella, one of these days. And the question is, when do you stop saying that? I mean, I think it's the same question for Durant, just different. When does he reduce those Olay defenses and early, and Durant hits 5 gets going early in the third quarter, right about the comeback time.
Keep feeding
him. And he hits a couple, and then first Westbrook comes down, pulls up for the 3 early in the shot clock. There are these things that, but then you look up and it's triple double with 30, and the only guy who did it was the Big O 4 times.
Yeah, well, you want to know the stat? I put it in the. It came from Elias. I put it in the post game thing. He's the first player in NBA playoff history to get a 30, 10, and 10, and also miss 20 shots in the same game.
I think it's all how we're raised. I really do. Here's how I was raised. My favorite coach in any sport was Earl Weaver. He was the manager of the Orioles. And he had this saying. He said, I'm not interested in what you can't do. I'm interested in what you can do, because what you can do will win me ball games. And he had a gift of looking to what guys can do and getting them to do that. And great organizations have a gift of looking at what their players can do. And great grandparents and parents and teachers and coaches and bosses have the gift of looking at what people are good at and getting them doing more.
Well, then let me say this, because I'm not level-headed today.
Good.
I'm looking for the panic button today. And I'm about ready to push it. And I think I have.
What's it look like?
And let me say
what does
this.
the button look like?
It's like the Staples.
It's red, button. Like the Staples button.
Where does it launch? What does it launch? What goes up into the air?
Well, I'll tell you what goes up into the air. Smoke, thunder, flames this season.
Define it a little bit more. Firing of coaches, trading of players.
Not just yet.
That's what I'm talking.
Not just yet, but let me tell you this. Back to our point. Scotty Brooks is no Earl Weaver. Sure, you get players to do what they do well, but you also manage what they don't do well. And Scott Brooks is not managing what Russell Westbrook doesn't do well. And this is we talked about Kevin Durant and his shortcomings. And now we're talking about Russell Westbrook and his. And now I'm getting a little riled up because this team is really disappointing me right now. It's really disappointing me because those 2 guys are holding this team back. Their inability to develop at a rate that they should be developing at as great players in this league is holding this team back. Russell Westbrook's decision-making and Kevin Durant's penchant for passivity in late game moments, settling for threes, turning the ball over, getting dominated defensively. Those 2 things can't happen. And I look at the coach for not reeling in Russell Westbrook. I look at Russell Westbrook for not taking it upon himself to be better and develop his game. I once talked to him about a floater about 3 years ago. He defiantly said, I don't need a floater. What do I need a floater for when I can dunk on you? Attitudes like that. I mean, it sounds good. It sounds, But he needs to develop his game. He needs to have a change of pace. He needs to take better care of the ball. He needs to make better decisions. His decision-making late in games, and Scott Brooks has enabled those guys to make these decisions. He's enabled a poor decision-maker and a player, a great scorer, who also makes questionable decisions and has a tendency of playing passive to control the game late instead of being the game manager that he needs to be, especially in this moment. They're going to win you games in the regular season. Scott Brooks has to rein those guys in and get them to win games in the postseason. That's not happening.
Just one stat to just throw out there about Westbrook that just shows basically what the hell are you thinking at times. These are the top 6 shooters in the postseason as far as three-point attempts. These are the guys that's taken the most threes in the NBA. Number 1, Stephen Curry. Okay, I mean, you're one of the greatest shooters in the game.
This is the regular season?
No, right now in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, okay, go ahead.
Who's taking the most threes? Curry has taken 42, and Durant has taken 42. They're tied for first. Those are 2 of the greatest shooters of the ever. James Harden, number 3, great shooter. Russell Westbrook, number 4. Kyle Korver, number 5. Klay Thompson, number 6. One of those guys is not like the other.
One of these things is not like the others?
He's shooting like he's a sharpshooter.
So he's shot more threes than Klay Thompson and who?
Kyle Korver. And he's right up there with Harden, Durant, and Curry. Those are some of the 5 best shooters in the game, and then Westbrook. You ready for the three-point percentages? Curry, 40%. Durant, 28%. Not great. Well, terrible, actually. Harden, 26%. Terrible also. Korver, 41%. Klay Thompson, 37%. Russell Westbrook shooting 18%.
Wait a minute. James Harden's not playing well in these playoffs? He's not shooting well? I mean, if only he were here, all these problems would go away.
He'd look better than Reggie Jackson.
Well, okay, let's go back to the people who've been to the mountain and back, and I'll make one more observation from their standpoint. I'm not saying I've been there, but I'm saying I know who they are. So the learning curve of this team. See, everybody wants all the privileges and none of the responsibilities. So guess what this team did? This team went from 23 wins. Am I right?
Yeah, 23.
23 wins to the NBA Finals in how many years, Darnell?
08-09 to 11-12.
There's not many. There's not much precedent for that. So
it might have been a.
What was the thing that
curse?
What was that thing that took the supersonic rate of? It was the incredible athletes, the incredible individual talents of these players that took that took the learning curve and condensed it like historically. So then you get there so fast, and now you're mad. Now I wonder why these young guys have not grown up. I wonder why they have not progressed. This is the cost. You had the benefit. Now it pays the cost. You can't skip steps. The guy with the designer glasses likes to remind us. And I'm afraid this team has skipped steps. It did.
It had a weird upbringing, I guess.
It did. They went from not losing historically to the NBA Finals in a bat of an eye, relatively speaking. And so now here we are. There's some lessons that didn't get learned on the climb the same way. They jumped over steps. And here we are, wondering why.
And it might have created some overconfidence in some ways, especially from Westbrook's perspective, although, I mean, that guy was born with some overconfidence, I think.
Of course. All of this stuff is laid into the upbringing of this team.
So now the question becomes, because it's kind of the other hot topic around here, then now that they've kind of reached this impasse, I guess, and where they're at as a franchise, do they need – Scott Brooks has been great the first 6 years, but do they need another voice, a different kind of coach, a guy that can take him to another level? We've talked about this a little on the podcast the other day, but Mike obviously wasn't there, so I'll let you go first.
Geez, I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. I would say if they fire Scott Brooks after this season, it reeks of panic. It's the Oklahoma City version of when things didn't work out in Cleveland. They let LeBron be the general manager and start bringing in all his guys. And then he looked up and said, hey, who are these guys? It's a bunch of vagabond. It's a vagabond city. I'm out of here. See ya. Check, please. I don't think you do things that way. I don't think that's the kind of franchise that Kevin Durant thinks he signed up for. I don't think it's the kind of franchise Russell Westbrook thinks he signed up for. I think there's got to be some serious evaluations. I wonder if there's somebody who's missing on the bench. You know, Oklahoma State, your alma mater, just went out and got James Dickey to come back.
Is that official?
Well, they're working on it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's not official, but that was the story yesterday.
Yeah,
and it makes perfect sense. Travis Ford's got a bunch of guys on the bench who are a lot like him. You know, a lot like him. They were missing sort of the wise head on the bench. You tweak the formula, but you don't fire the coach. I mean, it just looks like you're hully gully. And this is what bad franchises do. They overreact to stuff like this. This is not the Indiana Pacers. We need to keep telling ourselves that. What we're not seeing is a bunch of ghost basketball players.
And we're seeing them play basically a team that you'd think they'd play at worst in the second round, maybe even the Western Conference Finals. That good of a team. So this isn't a first-round exit like typical first-round exits. Like you said, it's not the Pacers. It's not losing to the 37-win Hawks who don't have Al Horford. So that's true.
That's right. They don't even have Al Horford. I love that guy.
All right. But you're right.
Jamal Crawford, Derrick Rose, apparently Al Horford.
I love that guy.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, you're right in that way, and maybe it's a panic move, but
no maybes about it.
You were around when the Bulls switched from Doug Collins to Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
What did that do?
That's a very, very good question. It ultimately comes, are they listening? You know, are they listening? And part of the way you see they're not listening is when their effort ebbs, when they're not playing hard. I don't think you go to 4 overtime games against the Grizzlies without great effort.
Well, okay, they may be listening. I think they play for Brooks. I think they've always played for Brooks. All right. Is he telling them the right things? Like, don't shoot threes like you're Steph Curry.
Have you ever seen Moneyball?
Yeah, I was in it.
That's right. I'm sorry.
I was an extra.
Here's Moneyball. Billy Beane told Art Howe where to sit. He said, okay, you're never going to sit in the dugout during games. You're going to stand up on the top step, and you're going to stick your chin out like a Navy ship captain. And you're gonna project confidence, and you're going to do it this way, and you're going to play these guys, and I'll keep trading the people that you want to play in front of the guys I want you to play. The movie was great, and it was this great scene. Philip Seymour Hoffman played Art Howe perfectly, like a hangdog. There's a partnership between Brooks and Presti, and part of that partnership, I believe, from what I've observed, the terms of it is, you're not going to do certain things. We're not having PJ and other coaches that come in here and tear him down and say, you're not playing the right way. Might throw him under the bus. People want George Karl in here. Can you imagine Russell Westbrook and George Karl right now? How would that go? Now, would the results be better? Maybe. Maybe they would.
That's what it's about.
And maybe the house would be on fire too. Maybe Russell Westbrook would be looking on the first thing smoking. All I'm saying is this. Brooks might get fired, but it ain't going to be in this offseason.
I agree, but before I let Darnell speak.
All right, Kanye.
Before I let you speak, Barry said it really well, I think, it was probably, 2 podcasts ago, when he said, and I don't think Brooks is getting fired this offseason, but Barry was, a firing is usually, it's never just one event happens and it's like, all right, you're gone. It's a chain of events, and this would be a huge event, I guess, a first-round exit when you're completely healthy. The last 2 postseasons have been a finals exit when you just weren't the better team, and then hey, Russell Westbrook got hurt. But this is a bad performance in the series, which we've talked about. Darnell?
I think they give him one more year if they lose this first round, but I'm not sure that that's the right move. I mean, we haven't seen enough development. We haven't seen enough change. We haven't seen enough progress to think that something's going to be different next year. And when I think of it like that, I don't know why they would bring him back if they lost in the first round this year. How do we know things are going to get better next year if you go through this all over again? Go back to what I said about Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. They're playing a certain way because they've been allowed to play that way. Brooks can't all of a sudden in year 7 say, guys, we're going to do things differently. Russell Westbrook, pass the ball. I'm going to bench you if you don't. That can't happen. A new voice, I agree. That would be a good way to go first. But it can only do so much when the head guy is still pulling the strings.
Yeah,
and I just don't know if I don't think there's been enough progress.
Yeah, and you know what you just said there I think is interesting, and that's part of probably why Brooks was so good for this franchise the first, 6 years or so, because he allowed them to. Russell, I know that it was a crazy game in mid-February that you had where you threw 13 threes up. But it's all right. You keep playing like that. Keep developing your game. Durant, keep doing you. And just the way he managed them was great. But it's the finer things now. And
it's not even just Scott Brooks. And let me say, some of it's also Sam Presti. Because this organization from the top has this, and I've called it in the past, almost a form of arrogance. That what we do is good enough. It's going to work. We just have to do it better. We just have to do it consistently. Well, at some point, you might need to change something. Maybe you do need to go out and use the mid-level exception. Maybe you do need to go out and get a crazy man who's going to come in here and be a Steven Jackson type, and not just these church-going, goody-goodies on the court. Like, maybe you need to do something differently. Maybe you don't need to enable Russell Westbrook to take 13 threes in a game or any shot he wants, that pull-up jumper. Like they, for the longest, were trying to prove that Russell Westbrook was this player, this big-time player, this point guard, and now look where they are. Like Russell Westbrook is still making questionable decisions down the stretch. He's still taking bad shots throughout the game. He's still not passing as much as he should. It's not good, and they've enabled this for 6 years.
I love you guys. I just love you guys, and because
you got some more level-headedness over here.
Well, here's the deal. Look,
I'm pushing the panic button. The panic button has been pushed.
By the way, this is definitely the most heavily critical Thunder Buddies podcast.
Here's what I love about this is Darnell's question, and look where they are. On
the brink of elimination in the first round when they won 59 games.
Look where they are. Here's the thing. They allowed these two guys to explore the limits of their talents, right?
How's that working out for them in the postseason,
Well,
Mike?
one of them is an MVP, and the other one's an
postseason.
The other one's an all MVP. They've been to the NBA Finals. They've been to the Western Conference Finals. They're still got a pulse.
Look,
the last time are you guys going to Memphis? Here's a question I got for you. Are you guys going to Memphis in a couple hours?
Yeah, are the Thunder going to show up?
Well, I don't know.
Exactly. We don't know. This team has become unpredictable. This team has become unpredictable. They just were down by 20 in the most important game on their home floor.
How many? I have been sending you to NBA games for a long time. They looked an awful lot
like the Indiana Pacers last night in the third quarter.
Listen. You have not.
Slater, did they look like the Pacers in the third quarter?
If you
been down 20 at home?
No, they have not.
That was a bad performance.
Those guys aren't even talking to each other. You have not watched the Pacers. Here's the deal. You've been covering the Thunder. You have not been watching the Pacers.
I hope he hasn't been watching the Pacers because he still thinks they might win the East. He definitely hasn't. But anyways.
So he thinks the Pacers still might win the East. But the Thunder, they're done.
Look at the road the Thunder's got to go. I think the last time I checked, the Grizzlies are 10 times better than the Hawks.
Yeah, they are. And the Pacers are 10 times more soulless than the Thunder. They're soulless.
I agree.
They're zombies.
What's a harder place to win, the Grindhouse or the Highlight Factory where people don't even want to show up?
Well, it depends on who's trying to win, is what I would say.
Look,
you still can't tell me if the Thunder's going to show up tomorrow night.
They've showed up every game of this series. They've not won. They've not done the finishing work, the finer details. But showing up is not their problem. They have showed up.
Look, in a vacuum, we're obviously being overly critical of what has been an incredible.
What do we call this room? What do I like?
Panic room.
The panic room. It's the panic. Welcome to the panic room.
Okay, but look, we're clearly being overly critical of a team that's won 60 games 2 years ago, 59 last year, and we're in the NBA Finals the year before. we've been probably overly critical of a guy that's the second best player in the world and a guy that's probably, between 5 and 15 best player in the world. But right now we're talking about the finer points, what's going to elevate this franchise to the title, because guess what? As much as everyone's, the window's still big, they're still young. I mean, it's shrinking.
It is.
And they need.
And that's why I don't know if you need to bring Brooks back for another year. I'm not saying fire the guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying if they brought him back, I'm not sure it's the right move.
You're not making this question in a vacuum. You're not. You don't have. Now, if Tim Duncan retires in the offseason, if the Mavericks rally, which they're not going to, that series has turned. It turned the other night. The Spurs are winning that series. But if for some reason Tim Duncan retired and Tony Parker was the only one left and Ginobili and left and all of a sudden Popovich becomes available and Popovich whispers sweet nothings in Sam Presti's ear and says, I'll come to Oklahoma City. That, my friend, is not a hard decision to make.
No.
Then yes. But let's try to get away from. Let's try to make it down to one hypothetical instead of 12. I love these. I'm on a 2 hypothetical limit. I don't answer any questions that have any more than 2 hypotheticals in them. So here's one hypothetical: if they lose, is Brooks back next year? And that's just straight up, yes or no. If they lose Thursday night in Memphis, is Brooks back? That's my question, Anthony.
Do I think he is, but I wouldn't critique or be critical of them if they went in another direction.
I would say, who are you? I thought I knew you. What, is he back?
Is he back? Yes, he's back.
I think he is too, but
knowing these guys,
I think if there is an option that you identify as maybe being able to kind of be a better, different voice, like Phil Jackson, we were talking earlier, like Phil Jackson was to Doug Collins back in those early Bulls days. It's an interesting thought.
We always say
it's
the Bulls, but it's been
thought.
more than the Bulls. Pat Riley took over for Stan Van Gundy, pushed the Heat over the top. Rick Carlisle took over for Avery Johnson, took the Mavs over the top. It's happened before.
Yep.
This isn't the first time. Like, Scott Brooks has done an incredible job getting these guys to this point. I don't know if he can get them.
Look, I don't either. But what I'm saying is, I don't think this is the shot. I just don't think.
The window is always growing like more closed. And what's Durant's now, he's going to have 2 years after this season. And that's really the window you're worried about. So, I mean, do you want to waste half of that time? Look, and like he said, I mean, are
you going to give, if they don't win it next year, let's say they don't win it this year. If they don't win it next year, then Durant's got 1 more year on his deal. You're going to bring in a new coach in his first year, or his last year on his contract? Or are you going to keep Brooks again and then let him go if they don't win it, and then try to go out and get a new coach when he's a free agent? Like, I mean, these are all decisions Presti's got to make.
It's interesting, and I think, like he said, I mean, I don't want to be too critical on Brooks. He's done an incredible job. And if he were, let's say they let him go, I think there's 10, 15 franchises, especially ones in younger stages, that should just immediately, if they have an opening, he'd be a great candidate.
Let's give Sam Presti some credit for something, because I don't think all this player development is just on Brooks. He had the bulk of it. He's on the practice floor every day with his staff. But Presti has done an incredible job of creating a culture that is conducive to young players being nurtured and maturing into better players, into professionals. Sam Presti created that. Scott Brooks fostered it.
But we're no longer talking about a franchise that's trying to be great, trying to be elite. We're talking about trying to be champions. Can they be champions?
And that's the sticking point.
Here's the problem. They're not trying to sell out to win a championship.
Well,
this is not what this franchise
is not about selling out for one season. I think what me and Slater are both saying is for the long haul.
Yeah. Well, I think they would say that, and I think they would say everything's going according to plan. I mean, I really do. I think that's what the Thunder's answer is. And
publicly.
But here, You have to look at the details. The details matter.
You know what gives them? We talked about them being overconfident. Here's that overconfidence showing up. Where did Sam Presti come from? Well documented. San Antonio. What did San Antonio do a couple times? Lose in the first round. So Sam Presti's looking like, and this is why I don't think Brooks is going anywhere, even if they lose. Sam Presti's looking at it like, hey, it happens. It happened to San Antonio. It happened to us. The difference is San Antonio knows how to play. The Thunder doesn't. They're getting by on talent and athleticism.
Mm-hmm. That's the one big difference in these. And that's all about how they were constructed. It's just all about how they were constructed.
And it's not it was clearly not like a bad construction model where it's like, hey, we got Kevin Durant and now we just drafted Russell Westbrook. Like,
just a different kit.
Yeah.
With different complexities.
Yeah.
And a different accelerator. They didn't bring in an admiral as the linchpin of their organization, a guy who was from the Naval Academy. They brought in a guy who spent 1 year at Texas. As good as he is as a leader, he didn't learn the same lessons that David Robinson did. As good as a leader as he is, he didn't learn the same lessons that Tim Duncan learned in 4 years. There's no shortcuts, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what we're finding out.
I got a text message just now from our old friend, John Rohde.
Where's Wody?
He asked a pretty good question. I want to know you guys' take on it. I think you know what I think. Who was more at fault on that final shot, KD or Brooks?
I don't know for sure because was Brooks just like, hey, let's run the screen and then Durant just get it and throw it up? Then Brooks. But I don't think Brooks probably said that. I think Durant just got it and maybe panicked. I mean, he acted like there was 0.6 seconds on the clock.
So who are you going with? Durant.
But at the same time, run some other action. Get some screens. You know, my favorite inbounds play is the backdoor screen alley-oop. Doc Rivers did it beautifully. Remember he used to do it with Rondo and Garnett, and that would just work so much. It would just work.
Mike,
run a play like that.
Brooks.
Shocking.
Brooks.
Although
listen,
I don't like Durant's shot.
Don't trust. I mean, it's great to you can't. There's a limit to the trust you have for everybody. I think that actually was one of the very first times I thought he was fitting people not under the bus, but like in the department where you put your luggage. That's where Brooks was making a little place for Kevin last night. The way he said it, he was like, "Here, Kevin, if you want to go, I'm not gonna run over you, but I'm gonna put some stuff in the lower carriage.
Here's a pillow.
Here's a pillow,
like you used to sleep with behind the curtain and Seat Pleasant."
We trust Kevin. Yeah. There was a little bit of that ain't me, that's him.
Yeah. Here's how I answer that. 80% Durant for me, 20% Brooks. Durant's got to know by now, especially when it happened in Game 2. You did the same thing. Don't settle. Take a better shot. Make the right pass if you feel like someone's open. Gasol was out there. Someone was open.
We're back to problems with his handle. We're back to not trusting his dribble a lot. Whenever we talk about trust, it's always about the other team, trusting your teammates. But sometimes you make a lot of mistakes because you don't trust yourself anymore. And I thought Durant took a shot that he thought he could get. And I don't think he trusted himself after losing the ball so many times and with the crazy man guarding him. I don't think he trusted to put it on the floor and try to do something. So
my other 20% is on Scott Brooks because it's the definition of insanity. He's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Kevin Durant is not going to take a better shot. You can no longer put it in his hands. You can no longer entrust him with the game on the line to make a better play. You have to design a better play. And so it might even be more than 20% for Brooks. It might be I don't want to exonerate Kevin Durant.
You're not.
By lowering his number.
Wasn't the question, who do you blame more?
You're right. I blame Kevin Durant more, so maybe it's 60-40.
Yeah. Hey, let's not get away without talking about our good friend Joey Crawford.
Well, I was just going to say, let's end this on a light note because, man.
There is no light note. What is the light note?
The light note is, I wanted to ask you guys.
There's a ball game Thursday night.
Yeah,
that's a light note.
That too.
Might be a funeral Thursday night.
Oh, jeez. This guy is.
You guys need some sleep.
Sleep. I need the Thunder to show up. That's what we need.
Okay. Okay.
Get you Starbucks, or I don't know which, but you nap.
I just want to say, what is your favorite what's your favorite just kind of play that had nothing to do with, well, maybe it had something to do with the outcome, but just kind of random moment in this series? What's your favorite one?
You go first.
Okay. Mine is the Kendrick Perkins sitting on Mike Miller. I just thought that was hilarious. And then the Xbox picture that came with it and playing it. We had a really good picture. I think that's funny. I was going to say your options are that. You got the Ray Westbrook tweet. You got the Joey Crawford, whatever he was doing. And then are there any others? There's got to be.
Well, what category? I mean, favorite. This is a little bit
just like random moment that it wasn't necessarily like a big play, but it was just like it was something that made this series, because we haven't talked about it much. This series has been crazy.
I'm not like a lot of people in that I'm in it for the entertainment and story.
Yeah, I am too.
And I know you guys are working your tails off, but I've had that one step removed where I'm looking at pure story here, and it's sort of, maybe this reflects my worldview. My favorite moment of this series, there were actually two. The one before the game where Perk gets the referee together and with Randolph and negotiates this incredible deal where, hey, it's okay if he holds me, but can I hold him? That was just the funniest thing.
And then Zach Randolph, yeah, that's cool. Like,
yeah.
Zach, what are you thinking?
Exactly. But my real favorite moment is Reggie Jackson after Game 4.
Yeah.
And how much that meant to him. And, still waters run deep. And I think Reggie Jackson's one of those guys. I'm not saying he's a great player. I'm not saying he's going to be James Harden. All I'm going to say is there's something to this guy that's very interesting. He's a little moody and a little bit hard to figure out. But generally I like him. And I'll tell you what, I like Reggie Jackson. I knew I liked him when I heard the story about Darnell in the seat.
Mm-hmm.
Have we ever told that story in Darnell in the seat in the press conference?
I'm not sure.
You know the story I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know the story. I guess you want me to tell it.
I would love for you to tell it.
Make it quick.
I'd love for you to tell it.
There's a perception out there that Russell Westbrook hates me. And it's not true.
I think he just I think he likes giving you a hard time.
It's not even beef. It's Russell Westbrook being Russell Westbrook. And, that's why I hesitate to tell this story, because I don't want it to send the wrong impression. But I'll tell the story. Russell Westbrook, first of all, has a problem with everyone in the media. Leslie McCaslin, maybe for obvious reasons, he is cool with. But other than her, I don't know too many people that he gets along with in the media.
He does not enjoy the media.
So it ain't just me. There's a misconception out there. But so this was last season. We come in the locker room after the game one time, and we're up against a tight deadline, and I'm sitting there trying to type a story. I'm in an empty locker, at a chair in an empty locker at the end of the locker room. The security guard for the team normally sits in there, but he wasn't in there at the time. And
you're on deadline.
And I'm on deadline, and I'm trying to crank out this story. So I cop a squat real quick to try to wait on these guys, because the team policy is we have to wait on them to get dressed before they can talk to the media.
Important safety tip.
And so I'm sitting there typing, and Russell Westbrook strolls out of the shower, and he's, doing his little thing after getting dressed. He looks over and spots me above the media crowd gathered around him. Yo, Mayberry, that's your seat? No, would you like me to get up, Russ? Yeah, I'd appreciate that. So I get up. And Ronnie Brewer proceeds to say, what's that about? Like, your man doesn't like the media sitting in these seats in the locker room. He's like, so? I mean, nobody's sitting there. That's nobody's seat. I'm like, that's his way. That's his thing. That's what he does. So Reggie Jackson then proceeds to, first Ronnie Brewer says, sit in my seat. No, he said, go ahead. It's my seat. Sit in my seat. I'm like, no, it's okay. I'm trying to respect your rules. That's your team captain. I respect his locker room. Reggie Jackson then rolls his chair, his little black swivel chair, from his locker across the locker room to where I'm now sitting on the floor, and says, here, sit in my chair. And I said, you know what? I'll tell you the same thing I just told Ronnie. Your team captain just said he doesn't want to sit in the chair. He said, that's his chair. This is my chair. You can sit in my chair. Again, I tell him, thanks but no thanks. When you're team captain or when you're the star point guard for this team, it's never going to happen. Then I'll sit in your chair. I'll accept the invitation. But Russell Westbrook said, no, I can't sit in the chair. So that's what Reggie Jackson did. And, he was a sportsman, as Barry Trammell likes to call people. And it was a show of just, I don't know, what would you call it? I mean, it was.
I think he's got the warmth of humanity in him.
Home training, humanity, whatever you want to call it. Like, it was just.
He's a nice guy. He's just a nice.
He's the most down to earth guy in that locker room.
Well, and I'm by the way, I didn't want you to tell the story because it says something bad about Westbrook. I think Westbrook's just always on the attack, always. But
if I tell the story, people are like, "Oh, yeah, it's just Darnell having it out for Russell Westbrook."
I'll say he's told way more people than Darnell to get out.
Yeah,
the chair.
I mean, he did it to Jenny Carlson. He did it to John Rhodey. He's done it before.
He'd do it to others if they did.
Yeah, if they did. So now the team rule is don't sit in a chair. Which, if you're sitting in someone at a chair that doesn't belong to a player, I don't see the point of that. And frankly, I've been in way more locker rooms than Russell Westbrook in the NBA. Media sits in players' chairs all the time throughout the league. So it's not like this unwritten rule that you never sit in a player's chair.
Anyway.
Your favorite moment?
I don't have one.
He's struggling. Joey Crawford.
You guys were down there. He's always.
It was hilarious. I love it. When I saw he was reffing, I gave a quick little press row fist pump. He's comedy.
He's been one of my favorites for a long time. Going back to the days of we used to do a live chat on News OK for every Thunder game. We did it for the first 2 years, I think. Isn't that right, Darnell?
Why'd we stop? I think that's an important question. Some people want to know.
I think it was manpower.
Twitter's.
I think Twitter and manpower both hijacked it. I think we used to have more people in the office who could help us moderate it, the live chat. And then Twitter became this place to do it, and we just did it there. There's a little bit lost, though, the interaction and but I think we've kind of come to
our man Mart's mimic.
Well, you know what? But he's our friend there, and we've had some guys, and Harry Mann and those folks. But anyway,
Pine Tar Baldwin.
So we used to always talk. We'd go up about when Joey Crawford. We would just have these times when wait for the Joey Crawford moment, and it was all fun and games. Then that the team was not very good, and so whatever Joey did really added to it. Then came last night, and beep 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 beep, and But the way he came in, to me, he got it right. It was wrong on the scoreboard. But the way he fixed it
was just weird.
It was weird. But you know what? It didn't rattle Durant.
No, Durant said it best after the game. It was kind of strange, but should have made the free throw.
If you go back and look at it, he doesn't really even bat an eye. And Durant kept his average up. He hit 1 out of 2 every time he went to the free throw line. 3 times, 1 out of 2. Joey Crawford's not the problem for Kevin Durant. He is the problem for humanity.
Actually, I think he's a blessing. I really enjoy it.
He looks like crazy Uncle Festus from the Addams Family.
What you said 5-10 minutes ago, I'm in it for the entertainment. Well, he is adding to that.
Gosh.
So
remember, you were in Los Angeles. Was it last year, Darnell, or 2 years ago, when there was a scramble? It might have been Meta World Peace and Russell Westbrook. And to separate them, Joey took his forearm and pushed Westbrook back into the basket. Remember that?
No.
I'm like, Westbrook is going to go berserk on this old man.
Before we get out of here, my favorite Joey Crawford is the one, you can find it online, is where he's calling the block, and he's just all the way from the baseline to half-court hop and doing it. That's my favorite
Really,
one.
before we get out of here, we got to get you guys on the record. What's going to happen in
Game 6 predictions. Look.
I'm betting overtime. I'm picking overtime.
Yeah, right? The last 3 games, I've said, Thunder are going to win because I think Kevin Durant's going to have a big game. I still think that could happen in Game 6. I still think, you're sitting there like he's got to have a big game at some point, doesn't he? But I'm tired of being burned by that prediction, so I don't see why I mean, at this point, I could see the Thunder winning, but at this point, I see no reason to pick against the Grizzlies. So I'm taking Memphis.
You want me to go and then you close?
Sure.
I hear Serge Ibaka. Let's start at the granular level. Serge Ibaka's had a really good series. It's gone underappreciated. 50 double-doubles, good shooting percentage. The Thunders are going to start with Ibaka. They're going to start with that pick and pop game. They're going to try to open up some lanes.
Is that what you want them to do, or what you actually think is going to happen?
I just see that's where the trend is.
One shot, well, maybe 2-3 shots in the last 3 fourth quarters and overtimes, something like that.
They go away from him as games go on. His stuff in late in games got to be more putbacks. You can just see that over the course of time. But I think getting him up over 20 is going to be big.
20 points or 20 shots?
They got to get him over 20 points. They got to get him over. So I think that's going to be a big part of the game. I think that's an opportunity for – you sort of think the Thunder's capped out. Reggie Jackson's been there and back. Westbrook and Durant's performances have been very flat. We've seen Butler, but we haven't seen any sort of great – I think it's an Ibaka game. I call it a 7-game series. I see no reason to depart from that. What are road teams or what now? 20 and 15 in these playoffs.
Something like that.
It's like the NFL all of a sudden. So I see a Thunder winning Game 6, another Donnybrook, another instant classic, and then we come home with Game 7 on Saturday